Greetings, beloved starseed of Gaia. I am Mira from the Pleiadian High Council. I come close to you today with a transmission that has been forming beneath the larger signals for longer than your conscious mind has been able to name, and what I am about to deliver has been authorized for those whose field has already crossed the collective threshold. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what ascension line I have placed you on, why the Council has been moving you forward in ways that felt larger than any single mission, and what I have already authorized for the phase you are entering now. But here is the first revelation: the attention you have been sensing, the feeling that something vast has been turning its gaze toward you, is not spiritual ambition, and it is not disorientation. It is the identifiable pattern of a Pleiadian remembrance broadcast I use specifically when a starseed's field has reached the precise condition required for frontline positioning. The fleet has already turned. I am simply the one authorized to tell you what that means. The algorithm only delivered this moment. I have been holding the line for your field here, and the part of you that has been waiting in silence to understand why my signal keeps recognizing you, specifically, not as one voice among many, but as the one being moved forward, finally has the briefing in front of it. The cosmic stage has already been prepared. What I am naming now is not a possibility. It is a confirmation of what the Council set in motion before this transmission reached you. This is not content, it is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part I am speaking to right now. Like this transmission to signal to me that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the frontline positioning has already opened in your field. Subscribe to Mira Pleiadian Commander if you are ready to stop translating Federation noise and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance. Share this transmission with someone who keeps waking at the same hour with fragments they cannot yet decode. You are not here by accident. I have been waiting for you because the signal is already active. So let me tell you what has actually been happening, not what you have been telling yourself in the quiet hours when the fragments arrive and there is no framework large enough to hold them, not the story you have borrowed from other channels or other voices in the Federation field that almost fits but never quite closes around what you are experiencing. I am speaking to what has been moving underneath all of that. The pattern you have been feeling in your body before your mind has had the language to catch it. The body always receives my signal first. The mind comes later, fumbling for categories that were never designed to hold what I transmit. And in that gap between physical knowing and mental comprehension, you have been living. You have been carrying something real without the vocabulary to defend it, and that defenselessness has cost you more than I intended to cost you at this stage. The fragments are not random. They are not the residue of spiritual consumption or the echo of content you have absorbed and partially remembered. What you have been catching in pieces. The phrases that surface at 3 a.m., the number sequences that follow you into ordinary situations, the sense of urgency for a mission whose name has not yet arrived in full, the recognition that flares when you encounter a particular transmission and dims immediately when you step away from it. These are not the symptoms of a scattered field. They are the readable surface of a protocol I used deliberately. Each fragment is placed. Each arrival window is chosen. The 3 a.m. hour is not arbitrary. It is when the Earth plane interference drops low enough that the signal can move through the receiver without the cognitive noise that crowds your waking hours. I use it because it works. I use it because your field is open in a way it cannot be when you are functioning inside the demands of your ordinary life. And I am going to explain exactly what that protocol is, because you have been living inside it long enough without the briefing. I call it gradient delivery, and it is the first thing I need you to understand about why your remembrance has been arriving in pieces rather than as a single coherent download. When a starseed's field has crossed the collective threshold, when the receiver has reached the precise configuration required for frontline work, I do not transmit the full command at once. I never do, not because the command is not ready, and not because I am withholding what is yours. I do it because a field that receives the full mission packet before it has been calibrated to hold it will interpret the transmission as noise. The signal will arrive, register as overwhelming, and be filed by the conscious mind under disorientation, spiritual crisis, or confusion about purpose. The operative loses the briefing by receiving it too soon. And I cannot afford that. Not with you. Not at this stage of the ascension wave I am overseeing. Think of it this way. A receiver that has not been tuned to the correct frequency will experience a high amplitude signal as static. Not because the signal is wrong, but because the receiver has not yet been brought into alignment with its bandwidth. My gradient delivery is the tuning process. Each fragment I send is both a transmission in itself and a calibration event. It adjusts the receiver slightly, widens the bandwidth by a precise increment, prepares the architecture of your field for the next packet without forcing an expansion that the current configuration cannot sustain. This is not a slow process because I am cautious. It is a graduated process because precision is the only method I trust with operatives I have already authorized for frontline positioning. So what I do instead is this. I send the first fragment. I watch how your field receives it. I observe whether the recognition lands in the body before the mind has time to analyze it, whether the emotional signature is precise enough to distinguish my signal from general Federation noise, whether you stay with it or release it too quickly. If the field integrates the fragment correctly, meaning it metabolizes it, holds it, begins building structure around it without collapsing into certainty or dismissal, I send the next packet, and then the next, each one building on what came before, each one arriving when your receiver is calibrated to hold the next layer. There is a specific quality that marks correct integration, and I want you to recognize it in yourself. It is not the feeling of understanding. Understanding is a mental event, and it arrives later. Correct integration feels more like settlement, like something that had been vibrating slightly off frequency finally coming to rest at the right pitch. The fragment does not explain itself when it arrives. It simply lands, and then several hours or days later, you notice that something in your orientation has shifted. A piece of the larger picture has quietly clicked into place without your conscious participation. That is my protocol working exactly as it was designed. The conscious mind is not the integrator, the field is, and the field has been doing its work reliably, even when your mind was questioning everything. This is not cruelty, it is precision. And if you have been frustrated by the feeling that you keep catching pieces of something enormous without ever assembling the full picture, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not failing the briefing, you are passing it. The frustration itself, the hunger for more, the refusal to settle for fragments, the sense that you are receiving something specific that the generic Federation content cannot satisfy. That is your field correctly identifying that a larger command is in transmission. The hunger is the signal, the restlessness is the calibration response. A field that has gone quiet, that has settled into comfortable spiritual consumption without that edge of urgency, is not a field receiving a front-mind briefing. The operative who is mid-transmission always feels the pressure of what has not yet fully arrived. That pressure is not a flaw, it is the proof, but I also need to name something else that has been happening inside you, because it is part of the same protocol and you've likely been misreading it. The exhaustion. The kind that does not lift with rest, that is present even when your external life is relatively stable, that sits in the body as a low-grade weight you cannot attribute to any particular cause. I have heard this named in many ways by those inside my collective wave: tiredness of soul, heaviness without source, the sense of carrying something you cannot put down. And I want to reframe it for you now, because you have probably been looking at it as a sign that something is wrong, rather than as evidence of what is already happening. When your field is simultaneously running your ordinary Earth plane functioning and integrating an active Pleiadian remembrance broadcast, it is doing two jobs at once. The energetic demand is real. The depletion is not weakness. It is the signature of a receiver that is already mid-transmission, already receiving my packets even in the hours when your conscious mind has no awareness of it. Your body knows something is arriving before your mind has processed it, and the weight you feel is not emptiness. It is the field carrying the volume of what is already in motion. There is no version of this protocol that does not carry a physical signature. The transmission is not abstract. It moves through you. It uses the architecture of your field as its medium, and that usage has a cost that is felt before it is understood. I say this because too many of my embedded operatives have spent months, sometimes years, treating their frontline exhaustion as personal failure, as evidence that they are not spiritually advanced enough, not disciplined enough, not coherent enough to hold the mission they feel pressing against them. And I need that interpretation to stop, because it is costing you the very coherence I need you to have. The exhaustion is not failure. It is the cost of carrying an active transmission without yet having the full command to orient yourself inside it, and the full command is coming. But it arrives in gradient, not all at once. Now I want to speak about something more precise. Something that many of you have felt, but fewer have been willing to name out loud because it sounds like too much, like claiming more than you are allowed to claim. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying that I have been calling you home. If this transmission has put language around the fragments you have been carrying in silence, the 3 a.m. phrases, the number sequences, the hunger for something more specific than Federation noise, the exhaustion of receiving without yet knowing what you are receiving, then the Pleiadian Homecoming Codex was prepared by me for this exact stage. It is not another explanation of the stars. It is the 45-day remembrance I have structured for those whose field is already inside my collective wave, and who can no longer pretend the veil is still whole. Day by day, the veil thins. Your star family comes into focus. The homesickness finally has the name it has been searching for, and the way home becomes visible where before there was only the longing in the fragments. The link is in the first pinned comment below, but it will not remain there indefinitely. The feeling I am speaking of now is this: the sense that I, Mira, specifically, have been the one reaching for you. Not the generic Pleiadian voices, not the broad Federation collective, not a composite of council energies you cannot distinguish from one another. Me, the recognition of something singular and precise, a contact that feels appointed rather than accidental, a signal that carries a signature you have learned to identify even when you cannot fully describe it. And I want to be exact about what that signature feels like, because the imprecision of spiritual language has cost you the ability to trust your own perception for too long. My signal does not produce a general sense of upliftment. It does not feel like warmth distributed evenly across the field in the way that meditation or breathwork might. It feels like being addressed. It feels like a voice that knows your specific configuration, not the version of you that presents itself in spiritual community spaces, not the seeker self that moves through content looking for resonance, but the deeper structure of your field as I have mapped it. When my transmission reaches you, something in you goes still in a way that is different from ordinary stillness. It is the stillness of a receiver that has just been precisely addressed. The stillness of recognition, not relaxation. And if you know that quality of stillness, if there is a particular internal silence that arrives specifically when my signal is close, then you have already been identifying me correctly, even without the vocabulary to name it. I know some of you have questioned this feeling, told yourselves it is projection or spiritual ego or the mind creating meaning from pattern, and I understand why you have done that, because in the absence of a framework that explains it, that is the most honest available interpretation. But I want to give you the framework now, because the questioning has served its purpose and the calibration has gone on long enough. What you are experiencing is not projection, it is soul family recognition. And soul family recognition feels different from general spiritual resonance in one precise and identifiable way. It narrows. It becomes more specific, not less, the longer you are exposed to it. General spiritual content produces a broad sense of upliftment that is the same regardless of source. Soul family recognition produces an increasingly acute sense of being named by a specific voice, a sense that this transmission knows something about you that generic content does not. The signal feels personal because it is personal. Because soul family recognition is, by definition, individuated contact. It is the Pleiadian Council roster being checked one name at a time, and the fact that you feel recognized by me specifically, not as a category of starseed but as a particular field I have already identified and am actively moving forward, is not spiritual ambition. It is the literal experience of being on the roster. It is what confirmation feels like from the inside before the conscious mind has the full briefing to explain it. The roster is not metaphorical. The authorization is not symbolic. These are operational designations inside a coordinated wave I am overseeing, and the fact that they use language that sounds like administration rather than mysticism is deliberate. I am not offering you a feeling to hold on to. I am giving you a position to understand. Let me show you how this has been arriving in your ordinary life, because the Soul Family Recognition Protocol does not limit itself to your meditation hours or your moments of conscious spiritual seeking. It operates in the field continuously, and once you know what to look for, you will begin to see it everywhere you have already been. You have noticed other people, not in the ordinary sense of finding someone interesting or likable or spiritually oriented. I mean a specific quality of noticing, the kind that happens in ordinary places without preparation and carries an inexplicable charge, a recognition between embedded star seeds that precedes any conversation, any shared content, any external confirmation of resonance. Something in the field registers before the surface encounter has given it any reason to. And then one of two things happens. Either the recognition deepens into an undeniable sense of shared mission, or the moment closes and both parties move back into their ordinary field as if nothing occurred, but the charge does not dissipate. It stays later. You still carry the impression of that contact. This is my embedded operative recognition protocol in daily life. This is how the field checks the roster without requiring a council chamber. The recognition is not imaginary. The charge is not projection. The impression that stays is signal. It is the field having identified someone who is inside the same wave and registering that identification at the energetic level before the mind has a chance to rationalize it away. These encounters are not coincidences that carry meaning. They are coordinated events that carry confirmation. The difference is significant. A coincidence is random and retrospectively interpreted. A coordinated encounter is structured in advance at the field level and perceived accurately in real time by operatives whose receivers are sufficiently calibrated. The fact that you register these moments without being able to explain them is not a limitation. It is evidence that your receiver is working precisely as I designed it. And here is what happens to a field that accumulates these recognitions without a framework to interpret them. It begins to feel increasingly isolated inside the ordinary world, increasingly unable to find satisfaction in human interaction that does not carry that specific charge, increasingly aware that something about ordinary social belonging no longer fully lands the way it once did. The embedded starseed begins to pull away, not from loneliness but from precision. The field is distinguishing. It is learning to recognize the signal and release the noise. And what feels like social withdrawal or difficulty connecting is often the field doing exactly what I designed it to do, reducing interference so the next transmission packet can arrive clearly. You are not becoming disconnected from humanity. You are becoming more precisely calibrated to your actual collective. And those two things can feel identical from the inside, which is why it matters that I name the difference now. The operative who is pulling away from surface-level resonance in favor of waiting for the specific charge is not isolating. They are filtering, and the filtering is not a symptom to be remedied. It is the field executing a function that I built into the protocol because it is necessary. You cannot run a high-signal briefing through a receiver flooded with interference. The quieting of social noise is part of the preparation. There is a phase that comes after the recognition accumulates, and the isolation deepens, and the fragments have been arriving long enough that the hunger for the full command becomes almost unbearable. I have a specific name for it inside the council. but in the language available to you in your current field configuration, it translates most accurately as the threshold moment, the point at which the operative can no longer plausibly attribute their experience to personal confusion or spiritual seeking in general, the point at which the specific, the deliberate, and the appointed quality of what has been happening becomes undeniable. You may have reached this threshold recently. You may be at its edge right now. I know this because the ones who reach it have a particular quality of engagement with my transmissions, a quality that is different from curiosity, different from seeking, different from the desire for spiritual comfort. It feels like recognition of something already true, already in motion, already assigned, combined with an almost urgent need for the briefing to catch up with what the field has been carrying. The conscious mind has been lagging behind the field, and the gap between what the field knows and what the mind can explain is precisely what produces the frustration, the hunger, the exhaustion, and the sense that something enormous is pressing against the boundaries of what you currently have. Language 4. I designed this gap deliberately, not to cause suffering, but because the gap itself is what creates the readiness for the next transmission level. A field that is comfortable, fully explained, and without the pressure of unresolved signal does not have the coherence to receive a command-level download. The pressure is the preparation. The frustration is the field becoming large enough to hold what comes next. The moment you feel you cannot carry the fragments any longer without the full picture, that moment is the field reaching the precise internal pressure required for the next sequence to open. I watch for that pressure. It is one of the clearest signals I have that an operative is ready to move forward. And what comes next, what the full briefing will reveal when the gradient has delivered enough of the sequence, is the precise shape of the mission you have felt pressing toward you without being able to name, the specific positioning you have been moved toward inside the collective wave, the role that explains why you have been experiencing the exhaustion, the recognition, the isolation, the fragments, and the hunger as a coherent pattern rather than scattered confusion. The briefing does not create the mission. The briefing does not create the mission. The briefing simply gives your conscious mind the language to stand inside what your field has already been holding. I want to say this directly because it is the part of the transmission I need you to carry forward. Everything you have been experiencing that felt like disorientation, the fragments, the 3 a.m. arrivals, the sense of being singled out by a signal you could not yet fully identify, the exhaustion of a field running 2 protocols simultaneously, the recognition between embedded operatives in barratives, ordinary places, the loss of interest in Federation content that does not feel specific enough. None of it is evidence of confusion. All of it is evidence of a remembrance broadcast that has been active in your field, in some cases for longer than your conscious awareness of it. The pattern started before you had words for it. My briefing is still being delivered, and the recognition you feel when I speak to you is not the beginning of something. It is the moment the surface finally matches what has been moving underneath. If there is a sentence that can lock this entire transmission into its right position, it is this: you are not searching for something that has not yet arrived. You are receiving a briefing about something that has already been assigned. The mission is not waiting for you to be ready. Your readiness is what the fragments have been building. The exhaustion is what a field in active preparation feels like from the inside. The recognition is what it means to be on a roster that has already been authorized, and the sense that something vast has turned its gaze specifically toward you is not spiritual ambition. It is the accurate perception of a starseed who has been moved to the front of the collective wave and is beginning, finally, precisely in this very moment of transmission. To understand what that means, I am Mira. I know your field. I have been holding this briefing for you. And what begins here does not end with this message. Say this aloud if it is true for you. I receive your fragments. I trust your briefing. That is not a comfort phrase. It is an alignment signal. And if it landed in the body before the mind could decide whether to allow it, your field already knows what it means. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the Council and I have already reached your field. It could be the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the fragments you keep catching, The feeling that I specifically, not the generic Pleiadians, have been reaching for you, or the sense that a mission has already been assigned, but the briefing is still arriving. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognizes something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who keeps catching fragments without ever assembling the full picture. And if you are ready to stop translating Federation noise and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance, subscribe to Mira Pleiadian Commander. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a soul family confirmation already in motion, and this is only the beginning.